Let's break down a single, pretty wild weekend where, according to our source material, former President Trump's iron grip on the Republican Party really started to get tested. We're talking social media meltdowns, big fights in Congress, and a last-minute reversal that suggests some pretty serious cracks were showing up. Okay, let's get into it.
Now, just so we're all on the same page, everything we're about to walk through comes directly from this source summary. Our job here is just to lay out the events and the analysis from this one document so you can see exactly how this story was put together.
And honestly, the whole drama of the weekend is kind of summed up by this one all-caps post from Donald Trump. But what the source material shows is that behind this defiant shout, there was a whole story of intense pressure and a political battle raging behind the scenes.
So where did the trouble start? Well, it kicked off with a classic political strategy, trying to control the public story. But what was fascinating about this weekend was this split-screen reality playing out on social media. You had the official, calm image on one side and a completely different, very personal storm building on the other.
I mean, look at this contrast. On one hand, you have the official White House accounts pushing out these picture-perfect images of a happily married family man, calling them America's power couple. But at the exact same time, Trump's personal account was on fire, just filled with these angry posts attacking anyone and everyone and really lashing out about his connection to Jeffrey Epstein. This right here was the first clue that something was really off.
And that brings us right to the heart of the conflict, a vote in the House of Representatives about whether or not to release the FBI's files on Jeffrey Epstein. According to the source, Trump's initial reaction was to fight this, and fight it hard.
And this quote, wow, this shows you just how intense his opposition was. When a reporter from Bloomberg asked him about the files, this was his response. It really signals how incredibly high the stakes felt at that moment.
So how exactly were lawmakers able to challenge him on this? They were using this pretty powerful and kind of rare tool called a discharge petition. Think of it like a legislative override. It's a way for a majority of House members to say, nope, we're voting on this anyway, even if the leadership is trying to bury the bill.
And here's a super simple breakdown of how it works. A bill gets stuck in committee. Its supporters start passing around a petition to get it unstuck. And once they hit that magic number, 218 signatures, boom, leadership can't block it anymore. It has to go to the floor for a vote. This is the exact tool that was driving all the action that weekend.
But here's the thing. This whole fight over the Epstein files wasn't happening in a vacuum. The source points to a whole bunch of other things that happened that same weekend that, when you line them all up, really start to look like a pattern of defiance inside the Republican Party.
And you can just see how quickly it all snowballed. On Wednesday, you've got Republican Lauren Boebert digging in her heels on that petition. Then by Friday, a Republican-led state house in Indiana goes against Trump on something totally different. And by Sunday, another Republican, Thomas Massie, is on the record saying he thinks a huge bipartisan majority is going to vote against Trump's wishes. The momentum was just unstoppable.
Let's just pause on that Indiana story because it's a really key piece of this puzzle. Trump was apparently leaning hard on the state legislature to redraw voting maps to favor the GOP. But even in a state with a Republican supermajority, enough of his own party said no. They killed the plan. That's a huge direct slapdown.
And Trump's reaction? Well, he went right to his usual playbook. He started lashing out, calling the Republicans who stood up to him rhinos, Republicans in name only. But the thing is, according to the source, those kinds of attacks were starting to lose their sting.
And this number is why. 100. That was the rumored number of House Republicans who are getting ready to break with him and vote to release those files. Why? Because their voters wanted it. And a lot of them were scared of looking like they were part of a cover-up. 100, isn't it crack? That's a full-blown rebellion.
Okay, so the pressure is building, the numbers are not on his side, and it looks like a major public defeat is about to happen on the House floor. And that brings us to the climax of the whole weekend, a pretty shocking last-minute flip-flop.
So just to recap, this was the game plan for days. A full-on campaign of public attacks and private pressure, all focused on one single goal: stop the vote to release these files.
And then, Sunday night at 9:15, this happens. A complete 180. He suddenly tells House Republicans they should vote for the release. The fight was over, just like that. But not because he lost, because he suddenly switched teams.
So what gives? Why the sudden change of heart? Well, the analysis in the source sees this as a purely strategic move. It's like if you can't stop the parade, you run to the front and pretend you were leading it the whole time. It It was a way to dodge a public loss and try to look like he was still in charge of a party that was clearly about to act without him.
And the source argues that you can't just look at this as a one-time thing. It was actually the most obvious sign of a much bigger trend, and it connects to a lot of other moments where Trump's influence was being challenged.
I mean, the source points out that you could see this pressure coming from all over. It wasn't just in politics. You had public pressure on big companies like ABC, a major Fox News host pushing back on his economic numbers, and even chaos inside a huge conservative think tank. And then there was that other discharge petition.
And this chart shows that point perfectly. On a totally separate bill about union rights for federal workers, it only took 5 Republicans signing on with Democrats to force a vote that the GOP leadership did not want. It's another small but really solid piece of evidence that the party wasn't marching in lockstep anymore.
So what's the big takeaway from all this? Well, the conclusion from the source material is pretty blunt. When it came to this specific issue, the signs were crystal clear. Trump had lost control of the House Republicans. And that's a really big deal. It shows that when the pressure from voters back home gets strong enough, even the most loyal followers can start to go their own way, forcing their leader to play catch-up.
Which really leaves us with this final big question. The events of this one weekend, as our source lays them out, shine a huge spotlight on a basic political tension. It makes you wonder, what happens next? What happens when what the people want and what their leader wants are no longer the same thing? That's the question this chaotic weekend really forced into the open.